atmosphere.
So if that was the SpaceX one, I have no idea what the Artemis one will be like when that launches.
God,
it's going to
I
be...
can imagine.
Those people just wiped out. It wouldn't stand a chance. Yeah. Oh, my eyes! You know, like in Judgment Day, Terminator 2, when she's on the rails, when she's having the flashback, and then the whole playground gets incinerated. She's like,
So, George, you know, I'm like a techie guy. I like my gadgets, my gizmos, always have. And I don't know if you noticed, but there's a new update for the iOS iPhone, right?
Okay.
And it has this new feature where it creates you can now customize this isn't an ad, you can now customize your background. Like in your lock screen, you can add widgets, and it does this thing where it makes these AI suggestions for who in your photo reel should be your phone background. And the people suggested were in this order. It was Talia, my girlfriend, right? Rightly so, probably the most photographed person in my phone book. My dogs, and then you. Yay. Many of you. It was just loads of lovely pictures of you smiling. Like, there was one time we went to like Primrose Hill and I took a picture of you, and I'll show you the pictures. It created these like AI really lovely backgrounds for like what I should suggest to have as my phone screen. I'll put them on the screen.
I hate that.
And like this one of you with the camera.
And it just so I'm on your phone reel not because of this podcast. I just happen to be in there a lot.
But I think the AI has gone all the social clips that are in my phone. That's a
this
person.
man is important
This man's
to you.
important to me. Therefore, let's find a nice picture of you guys at the park. Yeah. And surely James will want that as his phone screen. And that was it. There was no mum and dad. No. None of my other friends.
You have no
my
life
dogs,
outside
my
of it.
girlfriend, and you.
That's it's like on WhatsApp. I have to pin my top 3 chats I use every day. It's my girlfriend, my flatmate, and you. Because you're the people I speak to all the time. And sorry, mum and dad. Sorry, family. Well, I mean, I'm glad I made the cut. And don't use any of those pictures though that you showed me. Those are awful.
George, I'm not making you my background.
Why?
The dogs made it. But now it's actually just like a nice shot I took at the Cliffs of Dover.
Do you want to tell them what nice dogs you have? Nice Vizslas?
I've got 2 Hungarian Vizslas, if that means anything to anyone. My family has them, but you know,
lovely dogs, elegant.
I'd love to get a dog, but like it would be cruel in this small flat with how often I'm away and the fact that no one else is here when me and my partner are.
Yeah, that would be cruel. Also, there's such a tie.
But I told Talia very clearly, like as soon as it's not unfair for me to get a dog, I'll get a dog.
Yes.
And it will be like my decision, and you'll have to live with my decision of what dog we get.
Are you going to get a Vizsla again? Because I feel like you're informed by whatever you've grown up with.
I could do, but again, that's a big dog that needs lots of walking. So it will be a byproduct of my small version. It will have to be like based on what my life looks like and what I can do. I'd love a Great Dane.
But James, you're abroad all the time.
I know. That's why I'm not going to do it. It's going to be
I
cruel.
didn't see you having a dog for a long time.
Yeah, years. Yeah, I'm going to Turkey next week. It never ends.
Do you know when I was in Florida, the people we were staying with we were like, "Oh, you're gonna have a dog?" And they were like, "We'd love to have a dog, but you know there are alligators and bobcats and snakes." and I was like, "Imagine how like emotionally traumatized it is to like raise a dog and then to find out, oh yeah, the alligator got it, or like this racist snake."
In the countryside, maybe you have the foxes as a problem.
Yeah,
but you usually like foxes are quite small. Like most dogs are like a puppy is when you worry about that.
And even the grass is like like Bermuda grass. It's like really sharp and full of ants and stuff.
Yeah,
don't do it. Don't put yourself through that emotional turmoil. Just remembered something I didn't tell you, which I think you're going to find really cool.
Okay.
I didn't tell you about when I was in Florida. I saw a rocket launch, like an actual proper NASA rocket launch. Well, it was from Cape Canaveral. It wasn't NASA, sorry. It was SpaceX launch.
Oh, right, yeah.
So when I was there, they were going to do the Artemis one, you know, the big one that they
yes, yeah.
And then that got scrubbed. They kept saying on the news, we've had the scrub. Loads of people disappointed by the scrub.
Weather.
And then but they were going to have a SpaceX launch anyway, which is happening all the time.
Yeah.
So you know the time it's happening. It's happening 10 o'clock at night. So we drove an hour to like get to this car park or parking lot that's like probably like 2 miles, 3 miles, I don't know, across some water from Cape Canaveral. And like you can see the Artemis sat on the launch pad like all lit up, and then our rocket's just next to it. It's probably like that in your eye line, like very, very
much
smaller.
Much
smaller. You can see the light, but you can see it, like that. And everyone's there. They've got their deck chairs. It's completely dark. There's no light.
It feels like such a, I don't know, like a cliche 1950s film.
It was
thing.
like we're going to look out for the rocket launch.
Like how many times does a film cut to like the over-shoulder perspective of those people on the deck chairs, like looking at the rocket going? Like every single like Armageddon, Interstellar, every single.
It was really cute, and
Did you have a corn dog?
No, we just stood there, waited. You know, you didn't want any much light. People have brought like packed lunches and flasks. Some people had clearly been there, like for a while. And then you know what time exactly it's going to be launched, so you can count it down. And you're watching it, like I said, pitch black across the water, and then you just see, and this like huge bright orange light, like the sun, like the sunrise, but obviously artificial, which is really strange. Just explodes across. Everyone goes, whoa, and it lights up, and then
you apes are all like, ooh.
It was like. And it's climbing in the air, and as it climbs, it lights up more of the sky, and it lights, and then that is obviously reflected across the water.
Amazing,
and it was like truly amazing. And honestly, as it was like climbing in the air, I had the Interstellar soundtrack in my mind.
That do not go gentle into the good night.
And honestly, I was like, I've touched the face of God. This is really incredible.
And you're like, we're not meant to do this. We should be on the ground.
There is something strange because humans are always drawn to flames and like light, and this is so bright, but we know it's man-made. It's artificial, and it's climbing and climbing and climbing. And only as it enters the atmosphere, this has probably taken 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes to get into there, and it's turning into slightly more amber glow, and it's fading. You can look at it more. It's only then that you hear.
Oh, it's the sound.
It's taken that long for the sound to travel across the bay. Which just shows the difference between the speed of sound and the speed of light.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then you wait, and it disappears, and then you wait maybe 2-3 minutes, and then it re-enters. The rocket parts of the rockets re-enter, and you can see the burn up as it comes back.
Oh, amazing!
So the whole thing probably lasted about 5-10 minutes, but it was just incredible and very cinematic. But like it felt like real life cinema when you see something as sublime and as brilliant like that.
You've only ever seen on a screen in magic or CG. Like I actually can't believe that it's something that really happened.
It was profound.
And how much energy you could see like being burned to like push us out of the atmosphere.
So if that was the SpaceX one, I have no idea what the Artemis one will be like when that launches. It's going to be those people just wiped out. You wouldn't stand a chance. Oh, my eyes! Like in Judgment Day, Terminator 2, when she's on the rails, when she's having the flashback, and then the whole playground gets incinerated. She's like,
like the Indiana Jones, like your eyes just melt around your face.
Shut your eyes!
That
was a very fun.
There are amazing stories of completely unrelated, but talking about bright lights, where the really sad story of the soldiers who were tested from certain distances in the first explosions of nuclear bombs on boats. And it's really sad because in the years after that event, loads of them became infertile, developed cancer multiple times because of the explosion. Of but they talk about this time that they were sent on a boat. They were, kids in 18, 19, 20 years old, and they were told to cover your eyes and look away. And they were not told what to expect. And then, like, miles away, a nuclear bomb was set off. And these people describe, like, even though they had their eyes shut and their hands over their face, it was a bright light, and they saw the bones in their hands.
Whoa, my
That's
God.
how bright it was. And they literally, like, felt this heat, like, opening an oven on their faces that was, like, burning. They didn't get burned, but they suffered really badly from radiation. But, like, they talked about this blinding light, which is, like, indescribable scenes, which is very sad.
I wonder if Oppenheimer will talk about that next year.
I'm sure it will.
But also, you've just reminded me, like radiation is awful. When we watched
weird, it feels like too weird to be true.
Chernobyl, that was really good at looking at how radiation poisoning affects you. And really what it does is it basically makes you decompose while you're still alive.
Yeah.
Your body's just breaking down.
It tears the electrons off atoms, doesn't it? The scientific way.
And awful, horrific. And that thing do you remember Chernobyl in the first episode where they turn up to the power plant and like they pick up a brick and it like burns their hand.
Yes.
And you're like, you're fucked.
That's gone.
And do you remember the 45-second roof clearing sequence like later on where they had to like time it and the guy gets trips over and falls in the water.
Oh, it's just awful. It makes you feel sick. And the one that got me was the people who are just in Chernobyl, like the mums and their babies who are just watching, and they light up this radioactive dust that's falling on all of them. They don't realize they're in danger yet, but like this radioactive gross stuff. It's just and then the people who are just hanging around realize that they're probably going to die in 5 years of multiple cancers and all this breakdown of their cells. It's just doesn't feel real. Radiation.
The only upside was that the story, I thought, let me just end this on a positive note, is that in Chernobyl, there was always that famous story about the divers who went under. Do you remember that? The divers who had to go into the flooded, which was diggers. And I had always assumed, because I think the statues about them, that they'd all died of radiation poisoning, but actually like a couple of them actually had survived.
Really?
And had lived long lives. But
And the whole idea that these people who are like, you could never have, it was only under a communist dictatorship that you could force people to work in those conditions to contain the radiation. But it's those people that have died to contain it at that point that saved potentially like hundreds of thousands of lives. But you can only really do that in a dictatorship where you're like, no, you work here and this is what you do.
That bit where it's like, what happens if we like...
Not defending dictatorships.
No. It's like, what happens if it makes contact with the water underneath the plant? It's like the whole of Eastern Europe will be uninhabitable for about 500 years. I laugh because it's scary.
Yeah,
what else you could do? Like,
unthinkable.
I see. Okay,
Yes,
we better do something.
Great show if you haven't seen it, Chernobyl.
Yeah, fantastic. And the team from that are now working on The Last of Us show, which will be
yes.
coming soon. But luckily enough, I think I was far enough away from the launch pad to be all right.
Yeah, you were okay.
So, James, we're going to talk about 2 new releases that are out this week. The first one is Don't Worry, Darling, which is getting a lot of press at the moment because it's Harry Styles' new film, Florence Pugh, Chris Pine, and it's Olivia Wilde's follow-up to Booksmart. Now, I haven't seen it and you have, but I'm interested to know your thoughts because first of all, we're aware that there's been sort of like hoo-ha and stuff.
Viral moments.
Viral press going on around this one, which really is kind of irrelevant. I mean, we can touch on it because I think that'll be on people's minds going in, but I think, we want to talk about the film in and of itself. Yeah. But when I went to see Moonage Daydream, which we'll talk about after this,
I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
An extended trailer for Don't Worry, Darling. So it popped up and Olivia Wilde was like, hey, Odeon, visitors, we're going to show you and it was just a trailer, just a long trailer. And I thought immediately, I was like, I don't want to watch this. Yeah. So I looked down and let the trailer play out in front of me. And even by not looking at it, and I've only ever seen the original trailer once, but just hearing some of the dialogue, and I was trying to shut it out. I was like, I feel like I've seen everything of this film, and I feel like I have zero intrigue left in this film to enjoy because I feel like I know exactly where it's going. Mm-hmm. It hasn't surprised me at all. There's no intrigue left. I was like, from what I can tell, from not even looking at it, this is heading exactly in the direction I think it is. So my interest in seeing this film is actually nosedived, which is a shame because you think the marketing would do the opposite. Anyway, you've actually been to see it.
Just on that, do you remember we reacted to the trailer months ago? Yeah. We put a video up and it was a cool trailer and we were both really interested to see it and it had some very interesting ideas and we were both like, ooh, could potentially be good. This is way before any like Chris Pine Spitgate happened and like the whole drama Shia LaBeouf. But yeah, we were interested to see it. Don't Worry, Darling. So, as you said, it's Olivia Wilde's latest, stars Florence Pugh and Harry Styles, who has a bigger role in this than I thought. But if you've seen the trailer, you get a good sense for what this is about. It basically is set in this 1950s, 60s, 50s-ish compound in the middle of the desert. And you can tell that they're living in this almost like separated, very overly manicured, beautiful community. And can
I just say, sorry, this will be spoiler-free.
Sorry, yes, this
no
will
spoilers,
be this will be completely spoiler-free. And Florence Pugh and Harry Styles play Alice and Jack, and they are one of the few couples that live in this compound. And the gender roles, the very traditional gender roles of 70 years ago, are like really clearly defined. You've got the men who go out in their beautiful suits and fancy sports cars, and they go off to work in this job that they cannot talk about, but it's all called the Victory Project. We're all doing things like technical engineering for the Victory Project. And the women stay at home with big smiles on their face and they clean and they prepare this beautiful home and a beautiful meal, and it's wonderfully idyllic. And a certain event happens to someone inside their community that makes Florence Pugh's character, Alice, question everything that's going on and be like, hang on, what are all our husbands doing? And why are we just here? And what exactly is going on? And Chris Pine, who actually I think is brilliant in this. I think it's my favorite Chris Pine performance.
Wow,
He's found him and Florence Pugh have this amazing chemistry in this film. It's really good. And he plays this almost like Stalin-esque monarch that is sort of, he has his side profile portrait on a lot of the buildings and he does these old school radio broadcasts every day and he talks a lot about this vision that we're all creating and we're all a part working together to strive to be part of something greater and what we're doing. And, it's very sort of like propaganda-y. And the whole thing is about how she starts to sort of lose her mind and question what her life is and how it exists. This film really for me felt like a film of two halves. If there was an imaginary intermission and you took me out halfway through and you said, James, what are you thinking of Don't Worry, Darling? I'd have gone, really enjoying it.
Yeah.
Like the way in which it unfolds its mystery, fantastic. All the ideas it's throwing out, really, really cool. And the way in which it looks to like slowly dissect its central mystery. Yeah. Fantastic. There's loads of wonderful little sequences where they use dancing in the mind to represent like the grace and symmetry that lots of people do together and control and how we all move as one. Yeah. And there's all these like interesting ideas. And there's a shot in the trailer that was quite cool where she's making breakfast and she's got a carton of eggs and she realizes this egg is hollow and she crushes it and realizes that like this egg is empty and like she does another one. There's all this really weird imagery to sense that everything is perfect, yet something is not quite right. Then the second half happens, and I feel like a really great magic trick, often like the answer to what happens is really quite dull and underwhelming. And I'm really sad to say that like that's what it felt like learning about how your favorite magic trick is done, because Florence Pugh and I think the direction is so good at like introducing you to this very intriguing world and this very intriguing mystery. But then I get to the end and I'm kind of like, the most obvious answer was right. Because I did I think I predicted 80% of it. Well, I'm not like perfect, but I was pretty sure by the time I got 30% in, I was like, I reckon it's this. And then to know that that's what I was
afraid of.
To know that like it was just that is quite disappointing. So again, like you asked me halfway through with all the expectation of this like great writing that could be delivered, and then at the end I go, actually I don't think there's anything that special or clever about what it did. It's a real shame because like it knows how to set up a really good mystery. Harry Styles is I would say when you have a pop star introduction to your film, you don't want it to be distracting. I think if your pop star is in there and all I'm thinking about is that is David Bowie or that is Harry Styles, I'm thinking that's a problem. Yeah. He's actually not that distracting. I feel like he does quite well. There are one or two moments where it went a little bit Hollyoaks.
Oh, did
but other than that, he's just a little bit like...
That's a British soap for international
it's very sort of like EastEnders equivalent. He's not bad that he's distracting, but he's not amazing that I'm like, I need to be talking about Harry Styles in this film. He's just there and it's fine. But he's a much bigger part in it than I thought he would be.
Should be?
Florence Pugh...
do you think someone?
I don't think he does it a disservice. I just think he's kind of bland.
Okay,
if I was
he's
to say,
there.
Yeah,
that's probably one of the best outcomes for him, really, because it could have been a disaster.
Great PR for the film, I think he's been. Florence Pugh continues to be one of the best acting forces. Absolutely. I can't believe she's my age, I think, but she seems to have.
I think she might be a bit younger, James.
Is she a bit younger?
Yeah.
God, that's depressing. But she seems to have like a gravity and weight to her acting that feels like well beyond her years. And then Chris Pine is just like wonderfully like magnetic and sinister as this like sort of obviously evil overlord that watches over this society. And then him and Florence Pugh have some amazing scenes where the tension between them is like fantastic, and they're just like doing in this really sort of tame and beautiful environment. And that's where I feel it was a film of two halves, and that's what's a shame about it.
So first of all, I mean, it sounds like, okay, you know me, James.
Yeah.
And you know, like I said, I think I could tell where this film is going. Do you think I would have the same thing as you? Do you think I would know where this is going?
Yeah, if I asked you 35 minutes in, okay, what do you think is going to happen? I'd say, yeah, you're about 80% right.
Right, okay.
I just think you would predict
Which is a shame. Look, I don't want to, I'm very keen, I do want to see it. I was, slightly down put by, like I said, the marketing. I love the fact that it's an original IP. I don't think it's even based on a novel or anything. I think it's.
It was. I don't think it is.
That's great. I like that Olivia Wilde has moving from being an actor into being a director. I really don't think that all of the hoo-ha in the press would have happened to a male director. I think. I know what you mean, I think it's been a little bit
like stereotypical catty female drama.
Totally.
Right?
I think it's been whipped up and it's quite unfair on her. When you mentioned about Chris Pine, I'm really glad to see when you hear him say that he's sinister, because I've always found Chris Pine a really interesting presence.
Yeah.
He's not only very glamorous and very attractive with his like pearl blue eyes, but we know he can do funny charming as Kirk.
Captain Kirk.
Sorry,
Kirk,
it's
yeah.
been so long since those films were out. In Star Trek, or Steve Trevor in Wonder Woman. But he has got that he's got a great voice.
Fantastic
and I think
voice.
That sinister edge I've been really wanting.
He's
to
really
get from
convincing.
him.
I wanted to follow him.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, it makes me confirm my idea that we don't need politicians. We need actors that have like really smart people behind them, and that's all we need in this world. Yeah, it's like, I don't really. That's my main thing. Is like, wow, this is a film of two halves, and like the more the film revealed its central mystery, the less and less interested I was in. Because what I will give it is that like Florence Pugh in the direction, the storytelling, it's immediately gripping. The first half, I was like really hanging on every word, and it has that effect. Was as soon as it started, I'm paying attention to every interaction because I know it's a mystery. I want to figure it out, and every time someone says something, I'm like, ooh, and I'm like, do they know what's going on?
Right.
And I'm thinking like that. That's for me the mark of a successful film. Like you've got me engaged, and then just like as it reveals, it's the magic trick effect where like it is just a bit of string or it is just a card under the sleeve, and then I'm like, oh, how disappointing, you never should have showed me.
Some films can stick the landing though and do very well at doing that, Prestige or whatever, but so this is in this like Stepford Wives, even Black Mirror-esque territory, I guess.
It's similar to a Get Out, a Truman Show, a Succession. It's in that territory for
Succession.
Sure. Yeah,
the TV show.
Feel. Yeah, it's elements of that for sure.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. You haven't seen it, so.
Is there any comparison with WandaVision? On a surface level, when I saw it advertised, I thought, okay, you've got a 1950s kind of look, very much informed by the way that the media portrayed the 50s and 60s, typical gender roles, something's happening in the community.
Yeah, early episodes of WandaVision, sure.
Early episodes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd say so.
So,
I think
are you recommending it, or is it hard to rationalize those two halves?
It's a good time watching it.
Okay.
Because you'll enjoy the process of maybe I've not slightly taken away the fun of that first half from you now by speaking about it, but I still think the acting performances all round are really good, and I think the presentation of its ideas, I enjoyed the way in which they talk about structure and order, and that's what I find quite compelling. But like now I've told you that the ending is probably what you think, and it's probably less interesting than the questions. It might be a bit of a frustrating
is it
watch.
something that like with all that talent, and it's clearly got talent behind the camera.
Yeah.
It's clearly got a vision. It's got great cast.
Fantastic,
Do you
yeah.
wish with all that assembled talent it could have been more than the sum? Is it kind of less than the sum of its parts?
It's like you've done so well to set up,
Yeah.
and it turns out that like you don't actually have an interesting idea.
Okay, yeah.
Or it's something
I know
that
what you
I've
mean.
seen
It's
before.
It's hollow.
Do
you know what, just one thing as well.
It really convinces you to think that it's going to be something different, and actually I found it quite a simple explanation.
You've reminded me. There's I think I have spoken about this before, but it's really strange when you have a film that is so markedly in two halves. Not even like this is part one, this is part two, but where like something happens halfway through and it completely changes everything. And I think I mentioned before, there's that film that came out on Prime last year with Rosamund Pike called I Care a Lot.
Oh yeah,
Which won a Golden Globe. First half is like really interesting, really uncomfortable, really gripping, and then you could, like you say, pause it, take you out. So what do you think about how's it go? Yeah, this is really cool. Put you back in, and then one scene happens, and it completely changes the whole course of the film, and it just like falls apart like a set of dominoes.
Yeah.
So you finish, you're thinking, what if it's hard to get a consensus opinion about, or a whole formed opinion about one film, and it's like two distinct bits. But
yeah, and this I would say that's definitely true. This doesn't have like a midpoint moment. It's more like a slow unraveling, and then by the end, I'm like, this is not interesting to me. And then like when there's like a moment to reveal. A big reveal. I'm like, yeah, I know. I was never
also,
like...
What I will say, though, is you said this about the Batman when the reveal happened. You were like, okay. But I actually found the reveal in the Batman to be quite good. So maybe people enjoy it.
Yeah.
Look, Harry Styles has another film coming out in a few months' time as well called My Policeman with Emma Corrin. And that looks really interesting. And I think it'd be interesting to take that and this and sort of see... Maybe he's at the beginnings of a good acting career. I think I don't think you can include Dunkirk as a strong acting performance because he's more just like a reacting presence to Nolan's whole like opera,
and not distracting in that either. I thought he's unexplainably British.
They don't explain why.
No,
Is anyone else
strange.
British?
No one else is British.
That kind of
which I
shatters
find
the illusion,
is
right?
weird because everyone's in this like very 19 like this is what
very
we
American,
know is like
Eisenhower
American
era kind
exactly,
of thing.
and he is British to no point. And I'm like, oh, you're going to address like that could be an interesting point to like say why people come from different places, because one of the things is that she realizes that everyone has a very similar story for how they met and how they got there.
Right.
But I'm like, you've also got this guy who's unexplainably English.
Yeah.
but yet his accent sort of floats around American because I think Harry Styles' accent does.
Okay. So do you have anything more to say on it?
No, I don't.
So if you've seen Don't Worry Darling and you have some thoughts off the back of James's review, let us know.
I do have one more thing to say. Beautiful costume design. Amazing hair and makeup. Yeah. Like the outfits and the way which there's this first scene where you're introduced to these like very clear separation of gender roles, and the way in which this one I was really enjoying the film. The way in which the men all seem to come out of their homes after they've had their breakfast and kiss their wives goodbye at the same time, and they move into their cars and drive out of this cul-de-sac almost like a dance, and it's like perfect synchronized movement. And I was like, that's what I was like, oh, this is like a dance. And they keep like showing these flashes of dance. It was like, oh, this is really cool. And then like the whole design of it looks beautiful. And you've got Harry Styles looking beautiful and Florence Pugh looking beautiful. Just want to give it a shout out for being very well presented.
Well, good.
But that's all I have to say now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I just said.
Thank you.
If you have seen Don't Worry Darling, let us know your thoughts, or if you disagree with James, or maybe you like the way it was going, and we'll get back to you.
Absolutely. So George, a film which I haven't seen, but I've seen the trailer for. I saw the trailer with you when we went to go and see Nope in the IMAX, and it looked incredible. And it had. Did you see it in IMAX, by the way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not in Waterloo IMAX. I saw it in my local IMAX.
It was Moonage Daydream, which is the new documentary film all about David Bowie. I know very little about it, but I'm really interested to hear what you have to say. Yeah. So how is it? What did you think?
Okay, so Moonage Daydream is a really kind of hard film to describe, but just to give you some context, I was really intrigued by it because are you a David Bowie fan?
Passingly, I wouldn't say. I enjoy his music, but I'm not a fan.
Sure, I'm like a lifelong David Bowie fan. Yeah. Really, really cool. And when I saw the trailer with you in when we saw Nope, the intriguing thing was that this was being released in IMAX.
Yeah.
It's not a typical format which you would release a documentary
It's an interesting format to shoot.
They were going to push it, and they released it in IMAX initially, and it's now out for general release in most cinemas, right? And Moonage Daydream is a film by Brett Morgan, who has made other documentaries about Kurt Cobain. He made Montage of Heck. And,
I love that one.
And the Rolling Stones as well, Crossfire Hurricane. Describing it as a documentary is almost too restrictive for it, because I think like you watch this trailer, which is highly visual, and you think, what is this film? Brett Morgan did a really good interview with Lauren Laverne on Six Music where he kind of describes it. I'm going to read out his quote so I just get this right. He said, "This is not a biographical or chronological documentary. This is an experience to immerse yourself in Bowie's mind and bathe in Bowie's imagery. This is not fact-based or information-based." And he points out that, because so much has been said about Bowie and he's such a famous public figure, it was like, I don't want to make a documentary about the Beatles that tells you that they grew up in Liverpool and all that stuff, because that's known. So he wanted to do something completely different with it. And he refers to these 3 great films that the BBC made, which are more traditional documentaries about Bowie, which are called the 5 Years series, which I recommend to people just for context, it's like 5 years, the last 5 years, and the first 5 years. So 5 years is about the years between Bowie retiring ostensibly in 2003 after having a heart bypass, and then coming back in 2013, and it's about the years leading up to that moment. And then it's like the last 5 years are about the last 5 years of his life and how he sort of, rounds up his career and then, dies, at 69, which is not old. He could have been making music for many more years. And then the first 5 years is about basically how he failed for many years to try and break through, and he tried on all these different identities before ultimately breaking through with Ziggy Stardust. So that's what I would describe Moonage Daydream as.
It looked a little bit like a museum exhibition piece, an interactive, creative output.
It is a kinetic, kaleidoscopic, psychedelic exploration of David Bowie that understands the importance of imagery and pop culture and sound and music on Bowie's persona, and uses incredible cinematic visuals to explore the landscape of his mind.
Wow.
Right? And even though he says it's not chronological, it does actually follow a narrative that I think Bowie fans will be familiar with. So just to try and describe it, the film begins with this very ominous quote from Bowie with this underneath it. It's like the beginning of Blade Runner. And it's like, Bowie talking about Nietzsche and about the Superman and how man was dead and God was back. And it sets up Bowie as this kind of out of space figure. And then you get all the stuff about Ziggy Stardust coming down to Earth, and there's shots of the moon. It's like Tree of Life at times,
Wow.
okay? And then the loose narrative follows Bowie exploding onto the scenes with Ziggy Stardust in the early 70s. Then his move to America, where he breaks America, becomes very disillusioned, becomes kind of worn out with the kind of vacuousness of LA. Then his move to Berlin, where he was trying to beat his drug addiction and kind of strip down everything about music that he was working on, and worked with Brian Eno and made Heroes, and then built himself back up again, came back to the West and basically launched himself now as a pop star and reached mass audience with Let's Dance and like the Serious Moonlight tour, and then follows bits on after that. That's like the logical through line for this film. In describing it, I think really it is for, I think core David Bowie fans will get the most out of it.
Yeah.
Like if you'd come to see it with me, I think you would have found it visually spectacular, which it is. And what is great is that he like will take the opening chords of Space Oddity, but then weave it through to another track of Bowie's from 20 years later in his career. And there are these motifs and deconstructed songs that are like fragmented throughout that really creates an interesting sensation. But, you know, don't go along expecting to see like a David Bowie gig or David Bowie concert, you know what I mean? As a Bowie fan, as I knew that was the trajectory of his career, I could just about follow it. It's a bit long. It's over 2 hours, 2 hours 15, and I felt like, you know, it was almost, I don't want to say indulgent, but this is clearly something that Brett Morgan is incredibly passionate about, and it's like a love letter, and it's a video essay. And there were times I thought, that's great, but bring it down. I know you're trying to go into space, but bring it back down to earth a little bit. Yeah. So it's interesting because most documentaries bring their subjects back down, literally ground their subjects. Let's deconstruct it. Brett Morgan's done the opposite. He says, let's go into space and just explore this guy, right?
Yeah.
What does work great though is that the footage is unbelievable. There are hours of footage that he went through in the David Bowie archive, right? For 2 years, he scrolled through, and there's footage that has never been seen before. And there's very, very intimate and brilliantly restored footage, not only of Bowie performing, they did 4K restorations of like the Ziggy Stardust tour, and there's this great bit where he does a Beatles cover, but there's also like shimmering like Fujifilm stock of him walking through Japan in like a shopping mall being disillusioned. They've restored his film rolls.
Beautiful.
It's beautiful, and there's shots of him painting visual art in his studio, and Brett Morgan said it was great when he went through it because like there would be 8 hours of David Bowie just painting, but like there'd be 1 minute when John Lennon walks in off camera and starts talking to him. Wow. It's just very exciting. Yeah. There's also shots of Bowie dancing and his performance. There's a bit where he gets like a face mask constructed, and you're seeing them lather on this plaster.
Did I see that in the trailer? Maybe.
Yeah, I think so. You get to sort of this very intimate sensation with him, also because the whole film, the only voice you really hear is David Bowie's. You get interviewers asking him questions, but it is driven by him. Did you remember when I talked to you before about that film about Marlon Brando called Listen to Me, Marlon?
Yes.
Which was like, it took all the interviews and voice tapes that Marlon Brando ever made, and it used that to make a film about him, and his was like the main authoritative voice going through. This is like a psychedelic version of that. So you'll have Bowie, they'll stitch an interview that Bowie did in like 72 with an interview he did in 77 about like how he's feeling. And what really comes through, and I found really enriching as a Bowie fan, is that you get this strong sense that he was a true artist and a true like cultural observer that was incredibly wise. I mean, there's a very funny, very famous clip that isn't in the film, but it's like done the rounds on the internet, where Bowie in like 2000 tries to explain to Jeremy Paxman how important the internet's going to be.
I think I have seen that.
And he was just incredibly wise. And there's a great bit as well where he's made this big success. He's in the 80s and he's got Let's Dance. And this sort of journalist says, I think, some people would say you've sold out. And he said, you've reached a mass audience. He said, I will never begrudge a person for an artist for reaching for finding an audience. He said, poverty does not equal purity to me. And it's just the wisdom and how brilliantly spoken he is. What I also think is great is that Brett Morgan uses the film history of David Bowie to really invoke a strong sense of mood. So Bowie was many things, and as this film covers, he was not just a musician, he was an actor, he was an artist, he was a visual artist, he was a dancer, he was so many things. He was just so all-consuming and across so many different... Absolutely. So obviously, he's in The Prestige, but they use extended clips from The Man Who Fell to Earth and from Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, just to create a sense of where Bowie was at that time. And I got a much more refreshing take of how he thought about things.
Which is like what it should do, right?
Absolutely.
It should make you rethink who that person is.
More so than... It is a study in a very unique way. Brett Morgan has said he's like... Bowie wasn't a futurist. He wasn't just about thinking about the future. He was more like a cultural anthropologist. He was somebody who was like looking at what was happening and putting it through his own filter. It's funny at times. Bowie was very witty. It's brilliant to look at.
Yeah, it looks and sounds like a feast for the ears and
Absolutely.
eyes.
And
for everyone who loves it.
Do you know what was so great? So I saw it in the Odeon IMAX in Wimbledon, right?
Yeah.
And it's not Waterloo IMAX,
Sure.
but the sound. Like you and I complained about cinemas turning it down.
Yeah.
This one, if anything, turned it way too far. But I was so glad. My ears were like, and obviously they come in with some great Bowie tracks, and I'm sitting thinking, I've got to go back and just rinse this guy's back catalogue. So if you're a Bowie fan, I think you're going to find it really interesting. If you're not a Bowie fan, you're only a casual interest, I think you might find it hard, but it is such a unique picture that it's hard not to tear your eyes away from it. You know what it is? It's like, to quote, I think I put this on Letterboxd, it's like, to quote David Bowie, this was no movie, this was hazy cosmic jive. You have to see it to believe it.
That. You can follow George on Letterboxd at George Pulp.
Yeah.
It's interesting, like you talk about how breaking down the structure and not really calling it a documentary, but more like an expression of that artist's work, and you use storytelling to do that. Like I found that about Kurt Cobain Montage of Heck, where it used his diary scribblings as a format to tell the story of what was going on in his mind. And some of it was like the innate ramblings of a tortured teenage incel, but it gave a completely different sense of like where that music from Nirvana came from. And I love Nirvana and Kurt Cobain, so I was like, oh my God, completely new perspective on who that is. And then some of the songs that he played live, and they gave it a new context for what he was feeling in that time based on his relationships. You realize like that live performance was a reflection of what was happening there. And it completely, now I listen to that live performance on Spotify and I'm like, oh my God, this has a complete, like, screeches and scratches of his voice have a completely different meaning. And I think that's what you hope from a really good documentary, to like completely reframe the art.
And that's totally what's happening in this. There are times when you can then draw a link. And actually there are some very, very like abstract but very brilliant visual things that Brett Morgan does to refer back. So there's a bit where he's showing loads of cinema clips, and there's a bit he throws up a clip from The Red Shoes, the Powell and Pressburger film, great film by the way, and it shows Moira Shearer running, and she jumps into the red shoes. And it was only days later I was like, he's put that in there because of that line in Let's Dance, which is put on your red shoes and dance the blues. I was like, that's so good, that's so funny. I think it's inspiring as well. You will come away thinking, he was a true artist and a true leader, but it's also quite poignant because you finish and think, like I said, he was only 69 when he died.
Yeah.
It is a real loss that he is not still in the cultural landscape and still doing things. And, his music right until the end was interesting and good, and he never sold out, and he was never naff, and he was never passé. He was always a fascinating
You could very easily have become cringe, like the things he said, but it never felt like that.
Yeah,
he always felt cool and different and truly individual as an artist.
Yeah, and he never parodied himself. And that's what I liked as well. There's a moment where he, after coming back from Berlin and like stripping everything down, he has this sense of joy. And as he gets older, he's enjoying life more. And he says, I'm just enjoying and taking joy from a lot more things, and which is great because you're so used to hearing about how artists suffer for their art, and how serious it is, and there was nothing pretentious about David Bowie. That's what I really like. There was nothing pretentious. So
that's interesting, because he could come across easily as pretentious.
Yeah,
I think.
But I will totally accept if some people see this film and they go, what, I couldn't
overindulgent, maybe
a bit indulgent, a bit pretentious. I couldn't follow it. I think just try and go along for the ride.
Nice. I'm going to definitely check it out.
Really?
Yeah, 100%. I don't know if I'll see it in cinema because I'm away for the next week, but I'll definitely...
If you watch it on a small screen,
I'm sure I do something.
Just like make sure your audio quality is very good.
I might sit next to my TV like with it there with headphones, try and recreate
like I said, it's more like it's like Tree of Life level.
Yeah. It's the kind of film that like I'm really against this, but when they start doing films in VR, it's the kind of thing because I'm sure that's going to happen. Like, you want to watch something like that where like it's 3D audio. You're just, my whole field of vision is just like Paint and Bowie and whatever. I'm sure that'd be good. Amazing. So big thumbs up from you.
I would say so. Yeah, I would say with the caveat that it's a little bit long, could be a bit pretentious. But I think if you're a Bowie fan or just interested, there is something in there.
As always, you can send in your thoughts to hello@popkitchenpodcast.com. We would love to hear them. Okay, George, it's email time.
Love it.
Let's go through some of the questions that people have sent us. As always, if you wanted to send a question into the show, you can do by emailing hello@popkitchenpodcast.com, just like Sam did. Yeah. Sam says, "Hi guys, love the podcast, and it is my favorite new thing to listen to."
Oh, thank you.
My question is, how good do you think Stephen Graham is? For me, he is my favorite actor, and his dedication to his roles and conviction is extraordinary. This Is England is one of the best British films ever produced, and his performance is the standout. Also, great performances in Boiling Point, Line of Duty, The Irishman, Help, I could go on. Just wanted your thoughts. Love the podcast. Really, really enjoy it. Keep it up. All the best, Sam. Stephen Graham.
Love Stephen Graham. We did a review of Boiling Point earlier this year.
Please go check it out.
Great
It's one
film.
of our best performing reviews on the channel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, great. All downhill from there then. Stephen Graham is a great actor, and what I really like is that he's had a really honest trajectory of going from supporting actor, guy in background, to being a leading man in his own right. You know, I remember seeing him in Snatch with Jason Statham, which I think for a lot of people was probably the first time they saw him. And then he would just turn up in stuff, like I say, as a supporting actor doing this. And in the past, I'd say 5 years, he's really come through. I think I didn't see Line of Duty, but I know he had a great performance in that. To see him in The Irishman is great.
He's one of those actors that's worked with so many talented directors and other talented actors. You can clearly tell he's been so good as a peripheral character for so long that it's like been impossible to ignore him as a presence. Like, oh, you know who you should get? Stephen Graham. Yeah. And that's probably why his career is proliferated. I'm so sorry. There are like weird crows outside chirping.
There are a murder of ravens outside.
I'm sorry if you can hear like the ominous crowing.
It's Stephen Graham, I guess, who summoned me. He also seems like a very warm, genuine person if you see him interviewed.
Humble,
very
grounded.
A great actor, fantastic. And Boiling Point, if you haven't seen it, we have a review of it. It's on Netflix. Check it out.
This next one is from Rob, who writes into the show and says, "All right, boys, ! I've been loving the podcast and look forward to it every week now. I've worked my way through your entire back catalogue.
Whoa!
I tend to find myself agreeing with 99% of your opinions.
It's all about
and
that
it's
1%,
great to listen to other like-minded people on these film subjects. I love there's 99%.
Yeah.
It's like everything, but there's,
you know
there's one thing.
I know what that 1% is. It's Hacksaw Ridge, probably.
He's got the Hacksaw Ridge poster on his wall. I was just wondering what some of your most rewatched films were and what draws you back to them. Mine would probably be Peter Jackson's King Kong. It's a film I could only see half of and still be satisfied. That I see what you mean by that. I'll get onto it later. I even had the accompanying video game, which by today's standards is probably god-awful. It is god-awful. And that game was called Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie, because they had to call it Peter Jackson's King Kong. But anyway...
I'll let you finish that email, go on.
Yeah. It's bar my favourite Jack Black performance, as it felt like a character he'd never really done before, would most likely never do again. The visual soundscape, nods to 1930s filmmaking and acting styles are fantastic, and I think it holds up incredibly well for a film that was released 15 plus years ago. I'd love to get your take on this film, what some of your most beloved and rewatched films are, and why. Keep up the good work.
Okay.
Keep up the good work, lads. You're smashing it. Big love, Rob.
Okay, right. So Peter Jackson's King Kong. First of all, that video game was not absolute trash. I got given that for Christmas in 2005, and I played the crap out of it. I loved it. You got to have a Tommy gun, and if you put in cheats, which I always used to do with video games, you had unlimited ammo, so you could just fire a Tommy gun at a dinosaur. You could pick up the bone and use it as a spear. And you just find the spears. I loved that game. I played it for ages. And then you get to be King Kong for some of it as well.
It does not hold up well. I don't think it's a good
I'm sure
game.
by today's standards it's pretty ropey, but I remember enjoying that.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I think there's a shame that there aren't more licensed games. They've all disappeared. Like, you used to have great Lord of the Rings ones.
The Return of the King one was great.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
I love that. Sorry.
So, as for King Kong, I saw that at the cinema.
Yes.
I remember thinking, even in 2005 at the time, I was thinking it's a bit melodramatic.
3 hours, 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's long.
Beauty killed the beast.
Yeah, and it's just the shots of, Naomi Watts sometimes works for me, sometimes, and in this one, maybe it's the way she was directed. I found her, sorry, I feel like I'm being really a bit mean there. Naomi Watts is a good actress. It's more that, like, in King Kong, she's just given a lot of, no, to do. To
very-
be fair, she's reacting probably against the green screen. She's got nothing
Yes.
to work with. I find it a little bit saccharine, a bit mawkish.
It felt cheesy, like for the time it came out.
bit
It's a little
dewy.
bit. Like Adrian Brody is an actor I really like, but even he's a little bit like, oh my god,
Yeah.
we gotta Rose, you gotta get out.
That was the first film that I saw Kyle Chandler in, because he plays the movie star.
Yes.
And because Kyle Chandler has one of those faces that can be in like any time period,
Any
from the
time,
1940s
yeah,
onwards,
timeless
right?
face.
I love Kyle Chandler as an actor, so that's probably the most interesting thing I could think of from that film.
I think the beginning of King Kong is good.
Yeah.
Like the way in which it sets up its like intriguing Skull Island
Yeah.
thing. But then, I think it's about almost 40, 50 minutes before you get to the island.
Yeah.
So it's a long film.
Yeah.
I've not seen it in such
But you
a
know
long
what?
time.
This is the thing. Sorry, was that Rob? Who read
That was
that?
Rob.
I haven't seen that film in such a long time that I really probably should go back and rewatch it before giving an authoritative opinion. What I will say about the most rewatched films we've ever gone through, this is always an interesting one because, like, I love films and I like rewatching them, but really, if you were to pull the data, the most rewatched films are always going to be Christmas films. Because those are the films you return to every single year. At least my thing, it's like, what film do you watch every year? Not even my favourite films do I watch once every year. So probably it's all the Christmas films, I'd say. I've seen The Prestige about 8 times.
Yes.
And it's one of my favourites.
It's one you can keep rewatching like once a year, and it's still good.
And every time I put it on, I do go, oh yeah, it's fucking great. I know, and it's the exact same point. They have the whole opening, and then it's the flashback shot of the train going through the Colorado mountains,
Yeah.
and I go, oh yeah,
This is good. I'm in for a
great.
ride. You got to rub your hands
yeah.
together. Mine are very me. It's the extended. I watch them when I'm sick, and it's the extended editions of Lord of the Rings, and it'll happen, once a year, and I'll go through, and that's a 12 or 13 hour commitment, depending on how you count. So I'll do that a lot. Other than that, most rewatch. I agree. The Christmas ones are a good shout. I'd say like if you were to tally it.
Yeah.
From when I was a kid and I would rewatch a film obsessively, you've got like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 1 probably has the
what? I
probably
watched
has
it-
the number 1 on there.
Weird shout out for a thing that I don't think anyone else has seen. Although, do let me know if you've seen this. When I was ill, the thing I used to watch the most was a 2-part like HBO BBC collaboration series, I think, called, it might not have even been as prestigious as HBO. It was called Merlin, and it had Sam Neill. Have you seen it? With Sam Neill as Merlin.
Yeah, I have seen that.
Yeah.
That is just completely...
I know, right? And it's got Helena Bonham Carter in it, Martin Short,
I have
Rutger
not
Hauer.
thought about that Merlin.
I know, and I used to watch that every single time I was ill. I used to have the video cassette with
Really?
the purple cover. And
98.
Miranda Richardson as
Miranda
Queen
Richardson,
Mab.
Martin Short,
Yeah.
James L. Jones.
Yeah, and he was the Rock Mountain thing. Oh,
I
and it
have
was
not
so-
thought that is completely
But you saw
transported
it.
me.
You've
I've
seen
seen that like at the time.
I love it. That was so good. And there's so many of those actors would then turn up in Game of Thrones like years later.
Wow,
I
that
rinsed that
Merlin.
so many times.
And then there is the Colin Morgan show.
Yeah,
on
I
BBC.
never watched that. No,
I
don't.
watched a bit of that, and it
no.
was questionable.
Yes.
It was like the production budget was BBC used to have their own brand of like production
Yes,
quality,
yeah.
and it was really like of that
On
era.
the Doctor Who level, yeah.
Yeah.
But that Merlin I think is still very good. It's a complete story. as
God,
well.
I've
Do
not
you remember
even
that?
thought about that. Yeah.
Queen Mab and there's a dragon in it, and there's a bit with the frozen bit in the lake, and the
I
and
completely
Mordred. Do you remember Mordred
Yeah,
and the black
like,
hair?
really,
Like,
like-
Mordred, come back to me. And Frick, Martin Short would play Frick. Don't turn your back on me, Frick.
I've not. I was like unlocked a memory in my brain
there
that
you
was
go.
otherwise
you
lost.
are welcome.
Thank
if there's
you.
anyone else out there who watched the 1998 Merlin with Sam Neill, please let me know, because I have a real cherished spot for that in my heart.
Fantastic. Oh yeah, let me know like what films you watch. Well, is there something that you just always find yourself rewatching? Like I think our Prestige one is always like I'm always happy.
I told
Someone's
you,
like,
this is many years ago. And I'm sorry.
that's all right.
Sorry to cut you off.
That's all right.
This is many episodes ago, and I think I did read out, but I told you about my friend who like you and me, hates the film Jumper.
Right.
But he has seen it probably like 18 times.
Oh,
and he
18?
No, he was like, "What? How has he seen it so much?" And yet hates it so much.
God, what 18? That's really.
I think it was something like 18. It's something ridiculous.
that is insane.
Yeah. Anyway.
This next one is from Douglas. He says, "Hi guys, another TikTok convert here in Glasgow." That's quite hard
Hey.
to say. Short, concise question. My wife and I are heading to Paris/Disneyland for our honeymoon at the start of October. Any film recommendations before we go? Like you talking about New York films when George was traveling there
Right.
would be cool. He's got a longer question, but short
Good
one.
question.
For Disney.
well,
Do you just go with a Disney recommendation?
I think for Disney, that kind of takes care of itself. For Paris, à Paris.
Paris,
well,
Ratatouille, because that would make sense.
Ratatouille,
Yeah.
I would personally say
Yes.
Before Sunset. Which,
Yes.
You're
I'm
working your way through.
working my way through.
Guys, James is working his way through the Before trilogy.
I am.
Which I've told him to do because I've mentioned it every single bloody week this show.
I've seen Before Part 1, Infinity War.
Yeah, we will be doing a deep dive on those. So if you're listening to this and you want to, there will be an episode coming up where it will just be about those films. If you want to be,
These are
involved
George's
in that
favourite
episode,
films.
yeah, one of my favourite films. Go and watch the Before trilogy and make sure you're clued up. So when we do that episode, you can be a part of it. That's Paris. I mean, Midnight in Paris. I don't think is a great film, but it's very Parisian.
Ones. There are so many.
Is there any more?
Anastasia, the
that-
Disney, because I'm thinking
really?
Disney.
Yeah,
that has a big sequence, like Paris holds the key
Rush
to
Hour
your
3.
heart. I've not seen Rush
No,
Hour
me
3,
neither, but I know it's in
you know it's in
Paris.
Paris.
Whatever.
Yeah, Disney stuff.
Yeah,
Magical Parisian things.
linguine. No, it's just
Ratatouille. Yeah. Longer point based on last episode. I enjoy the show and it's always interesting to hear your perspectives when it comes to Marvel topics. When it comes to James asking, why do I need this? I was having a discussion with my mates about Marvel a few months ago when the divisive Moon Knight came out and we remarked that Marvel Studios is now running their TV and film productions kind of how they run the comic side. You don't have to pick up every comic book and every title, issue, character won't be for everyone. But when those characters appear in the big events that everyone reads, then it just helps you more. I think the same can be now said for the MCU, where the Disney Plus shows are like the weekly comic issues fans pick up along the way, heading towards the big main events. Books like Civil War, Infinity War, which you can now buy years later as a package comprising all 12 issues. There are obviously many more stories, but I've just picked those two because of the successes of their MCU counterparts, even if not straight retellings of those stories.
That's interesting.
Audiences are obviously at the point where they think they need to consume every corner of the MCU when it's maybe not the case. As for James's other criticism about it not all tying in, I think the Juggernaut will eventually roll on to one big story that we're as yet to be aware of.
Okay.
Nobody saw Thanos coming until the very end of phase 1 when we didn't even know that was a first phase. Keep up the good work, Douglas. Interesting.
Yeah,
and I kind of think you're right, because I think I did say, like, why do I need this? And I think what we have to realize is that we shouldn't try and consume it all, and it's not meant to be consumed for everyone, and it's meant to sort of try and appeal to as many different fringe audiences that hopefully act as your gateway drug into the main thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, George, any thoughts on that?
No, I think that was summed up very well.
Yeah, I think we're caught in a place where you and I are like, we're interested in Marvel,
Yeah.
and it's so good when it's good. Yeah. So we're always trying to chase the dragon of that like high we feel when all the things come together and work. And I think we have a sort of a desire to try and watch as many things to contribute content for the show, but realistically it's like it's not all for us, it's not all going to be good, and we get a little bit,
there aren't enough hours in the day.
I've listened back and I go, God, we're really cynical about the whole Marvel, Star Wars, Disney stuff, but actually, you know, it's hard to try and stay excited, but I think it's an absolutely fair point. Molly writes into hello@popkitchenpodcast.com. She says, hi, Pop Kitchen. I was watching the Lindsay Ellis videos about The Hobbit. I was wondering if you believe that the ethics behind the making of the film affected your viewing of it. Love the podcast, and I wasn't sure about watching the new West Side Story. And after listening, did so straight away. So thank you, George, for recommending that incredible film. Molly, on The Hobbit, in terms of ethics, I'm not sure what you mean, but what I did, I haven't seen that Lindsay Ellis video, but I know of the videos that she makes. But I know that when the Hobbit films were originally being made, they were going to be split into two, which at the time made headlines for being, you're splitting a 200-page children's book into two. Yeah. That's like a bit much, cash grab. Yeah. And then during like the early stages of production, it became 3 films. There are moments in the behind the scenes of The Hobbit, and that we know during the production process of that, where Peter Jackson literally says to camera, I'm winging it. I am winging a lot of this. I never should have done this much of a big production. Never such a 360-day shoot.
Wow.
And you can almost tell that, I think he cleverly overshoots Peter Jackson, and he always has more stuff to draw from. But I think, you know, if you've seen those films, you do know that they stretch a little bit thin, that you can kind of feel like someone at the top said, we can get 3 cinema tickets out of this, let's do it.
Well, that's the thing. He said in an interview, oh no, it was our decision, it wasn't a studio decision. And I'm like, I don't believe you. He was incredibly cynical.
It just gets so thin, that film. And when you see Peter Jackson being like, let's just invent this scene where it's with these really ancillary characters that's never going to link back to the main thing, but we're just going to come up with it because we've got the budget and we've got the time, and that's what's a real shame about it.
Just on the West Side Story thing, I know I've mentioned that film a bit throughout the year, but I
You're
just
watching
want to mention
Christmas,
it.
I think.
Yes, I think that's perfect time to watch it. with West Side Story, I think a lot of people are a bit like how I was before I saw it, which is like they like the original. They have like, kind of feel okay towards it as an IP.
Yeah.
But they don't necessarily have that kind of kickstart to go and watch it.
Yeah.
My girlfriend went and watched it. She said to me, George, you got to go see it. It was amazing. I'll go with you again. We went and saw it. I loved it, as you know. Thought it was fantastic, incredibly moving, beautifully done. Just incredibly beautiful and heartfelt from Spielberg. I then said to my brother was like, I'm going to the cinema next week. I could go see Licorice Pizza or West Side Story. I said, well, whatever you do, you have to see West Side Story, preferably on the big screen.
Right,
You
okay.
really must go. He said, okay, I'll go to that. I then get a voice note from him saying, it was amazing. Everyone clapped at the end. I'm so glad you made me go.
Yeah.
Similarly, my flatmate was like, oh, you said West Side Story was good. Should I go see it? I said, if you've got time,
interesting?
go
Everyone's
and
like,
see it. Yeah,
"Ah."
exactly. And then when they go, same thing, my flatmate came back. He was like, I cried 6 times. That is incredible.
Wow.
So just have faith and go and watch it.
Go
I think you'll be really pleased.
Love that.
Just like Molly did.
Just like Molly did. We didn't get. Do we have a name? Yeah, we do have a name. This one's from Nick. Hi lads, great podcast. I'll avoid the cliche completely and say I started listening to you on the wireless back in the war. Coming to you live on Radio 4.
This is the PULP Kitchen.
I'm picturing you, Nick, just sitting like in an armchair, facing away from your radio with a pipe and a newspaper, maybe like an ink and quill, writing this message to us.
Have you seen them talking about the talkies
Yeah.
recently?
Like an update on the war.
It reminds me of sorry, we will get to your email,
Yeah,
but
sorry.
like when I used to talk to my nan about the cinema, she would tell me about like the A picture and the B
pictures.
picture. Yeah, the pictures. And the A picture and the B picture. And
Yeah.
you go into the cinema, it doesn't matter what, they'd let you in at any point during the film.
Yeah.
And you'd sit there and you'd watch it to the end and you'd stay and then watch the beginning bit again. And then
That's crazy.
And you'd get the A film, which is like, the main sort of like prestigious picture. And then the B picture would be like the more comedy or the horror or the genre territory.
Yeah.
And, people would smoke and they wouldn't even be seating. They'd just be like social steps. They would just sit on like bench seating.
Oh, right, yeah.
Well, in this cinema at least. And I was like, wow.
What a time to
What
see it.
a time. Probably the smoke from people's cigarettes filtering through
yes.
the light from the lens.
Yeah.
So not the lens, the light from the projector. Brilliant. Anyway,
That
sorry.
and smoking on planes blows my mind.
Smoking on planes in particular, because I'm like, you are in a sealed tube with all that.
Like in a combustion engine, like a massive
Yeah.
combustion engine. Mental.
Anyway.
Nick says, great podcast. Oh yeah, I'll avoid the cliche. Blah, blah, blah. I just finished listening to your latest episode and wanted to offer some feedback on the topic of which streaming service will fold over the next few years.
Okay.
So if you don't know, we just had a little discussion about. We ended up. We were
This is
talking
after
about
our Disney one we did, the D3, D23.
We just had a comment on whether or not one of these is going to die and if like the amount of money they spend is sustainable. So go check that out if you haven't. While I agree that the market is too crowded and with the economic downturn, brackets, thanks Putin, biting, there will undoubtedly be some consolidation in the sector. I concur that Apple, Disney Plus and Amazon Prime are too big to fail. Regardless of whether they make a profit, the parent company has deep enough pockets to keep the service running. Netflix is the only streamer not supported by a major studio, so logic would suggest that it'll fail when things get tough. But like you said on the pod, it'll also be the default streamer for a lot of people, and I think that will keep it afloat. But I do think it needs a massive pop cultural hit, especially with a valuable IP like Stranger Things coming to an end. So does that mean Paramount Plus is on the chopping block? Possibly. Or, and I think this is more likely, we're going to see a series of mergers in the sector. This is interesting.
I think so.
And I think Netflix is the logical company to look at merging with its weaker competition. In a decade's time, we might have subscriptions to Apple, to Disney, and to Netflix, Paramount, or Netflix HBO, or something like that. Interesting point.
I think, sorry, I was just
That's right, go on.
I think you're right. In the same way that Disney bought Fox for like a crazy amount of money, I could see Amazon or even Apple even just swallowing Netflix and like subsuming it. Netflix are $15 billion in debt, okay?
Yeah.
So my point was, I said something will fold. I think it's more really that something's got to give. I can see the mergers probably being, you're right, why let a very valuable brand, even though it's not profitable as such, disappear? It will be bought up and consumed elsewhere. What do you think?
I think that sounds like a really
I think it's a good take.
likely thing. I think what we see sadly across multiple industries and entertainment is that so much is becoming consolidated and more many companies are being owned by fewer and fewer. So as a prediction, that makes sense. And you take in how it's valued, how much debt it has. That seems like it could happen.
I was thinking about something as a tangent. It is quite depressing how our culture, or at least our engagement with media culture, has been carved up and owned by a handful of streaming services, right? And what I mean by that is that in the old days, if you said, "Oh, I went to see a film, it was great." Oh, is that? Oh, that you just know that was on at the local cinema, right? And everyone in your town and workplace would have access to that cinema and they could go see it, right? Or I saw this show on TV, everyone would have access to that TV show.
Channel 4.
So culture was shared. Increasingly, and this is why I actually sometimes find it really boring to talk about TV with friends and stuff, because it goes, oh, we've watched this great show. Oh, what's that on? Netflix. Oh, we don't have Netflix. Oh, we have Disney though. We watch the. Oh, I don't have Disney. Oh, but we've watched this thing. Is that on Now TV? Or we didn't subscribe to Now TV.
Fractured a little bit.
And you've got this complete fracture where culture has been like carved off, and it's almost like, who are you? Whose team are you on?
Yeah.
And you, it's very hard to have a consensus conversation about a TV show. If you bring up a TV show in a group of 6 people, I guarantee only 3 people would have maybe seen it.
Or have access to it without having to pay.
10 years ago, 15 years ago, did you see that thing on BBC One? Everyone had seen it.
You know what they're also cracking down on? Account sharing. Because Netflix for so long, you could have like 5 people on an account. That's going to get slapped down. But he goes on to say, speaking of Netflix, do you think that the current events in the UK are going to impact the upcoming seasons of The Crown? While it's always been suggested that the show would continue until the Queen Mother's death in 2002, it must now be tempting for Netflix to push for another season on top of the 6 already produced / in production to take it through to the present day. It's not like the 20 years since the death of the Queen Mother has been without interesting storylines. Anyway, I'd be keen to hear your thoughts. Keep up the great work, and I'll keep my wireless tuned in. Nick.
Thank you. I was thinking about The Crown with, the death of the Queen and sort of the changing monarchy. But
they stopped filming for the period of mourning.
Right, okay.
Rightly so. It would be strange to not.
But it's interesting because I thought, from Peter Morgan's point of view, as the showrunner, you're creating the show, and all of a sudden, in the space of 10 days, there's been a massive cultural shift in the UK. It might not feel like it, but there is a complete change of an era.
Yeah.
And who knows what people's attitude to the monarchy now is now. So Peter Morgan might be thinking, I have no idea now how people are going to receive this new season, receive my show anymore. Their appetite was once this, but now we've had this change. They could reject it. They could engage with this show.
Depends how cynical it becomes, right?
Completely differently. That said, I still think they'll push ahead, and it is still coming out, and what's done is done. I do think they will still wrap it in 2002. I know you say it's not like the 20 years since it's been done. It's not been short of interesting things to have happened, but all the stuff that's kicked off with the royal family in the past 20 years is mainly in the last 5 years, and it's Harry and Meghan and Prince Andrew. That stuff is kind of still happening, or still. I mean, the Prince Andrew stuff. I know that the case was settled, but like all that stuff is still very fresh, and the story is kind of still being written about that. And I don't think the closer you get to present day, the harder it is to stay objective, and the more you're going to fall into territories and camps and subjectivity, because you're drawing from information that has not been verified.
The dust hasn't settled.
Literally, the dust hasn't settled. So I thought it would be much cleaner to end in 2002. And because, between 2002 and 2012, I couldn't think of a single thing that happens to the royal family that stands out, except for Charles gets married to Camilla. Okay, whatever. Yeah. And then you have the royal family, royal wedding in 2011.
Yeah.
Then there's nothing, I think, until Harry's wedding in 2018. Then you've got the Sussex is leaving in 2020. Prince Philip dies in 2021.
It's very recent.
And Prince Andrew in 2019. So I personally don't think they'll go there. I think they'll end it nice and cleaner at 50 years.
I also like moments in The Crown where it decides to be really bold in how it presented a period of history or events that happened. Like when it did the great episode about the fog, and it showed you like these decisions, thank you, these decisions that were made caused this much death, or when it really for much of season 2, the king who abdicated, I can't remember his name, Edward VIII, when they let his whole character arc play out, and then it was revealed that he was, had a deal with Hitler, and they showed pictures of him like outside a concentration camp shaking hands with Nazis. Like, I think
it was a military parade, but not that I need to defend Christ, Edward III, whatever.
No, correct me. No, that's fine. It was pretty hard. And so this is the stance that we're depicting of like what happened in history, and it's very clear with that. When you're, do you remember the Benedict Cumberbatch Brexit, the uncivil war thing came out?
I like that.
I thought it was good too, but I was almost like, this is all still happening.
Yes.
And we've got the Kenneth Branagh, Boris Johnson drama coming out on Sky.
Yeah.
And it's all about like Matt Hancock and the PPE. And I'm like,
I've just lived it.
I just lived it. I was like, I actually blocked this out because it was just so like we actually were recording this podcast like in the midst of like the second lockdown, and we were okay to meet people, but it was like really hard times where you couldn't leave and everything was shut, and I almost just like don't want to engage with it. And I think what you mean, like the dust hasn't settled on these things.
Do you know what's funny is that I remember in 2016 after Brexit and after Trump got elected, and everyone was like, what do we do? And I said, guys, the only way we can get through this is by thinking it's all crazy now, but in 10 years' time, this will make a fantastic HBO show.
Yeah, yeah, really good TV. And then just on, whether or not that changes their approach, I really think that when Peter Morgan goes and starts the production for The Crown, he looks at how long this is going to take and the fact he wants to do 6 seasons. He must be aware of the Queen's age and must have calculated the fact that there is a very likely chance that before I finish this show, which will be this grand retelling of the monarch's life, by the time we get to the end, there's a very strong chance that the Queen will either have died or be very close to her death. So I think the way this show is going to end is not going to be that much different to how it originally
I agree.
done.
I think it'll stay.
I think if anything, it adds an entirely new gravitas to Imelda Staunton's performance and the way in which that worked. I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah, I'm looking forward to Crown. I love a bit of Crown. This last one is from Colin, who says, "Hi, I don't remember where I found you guys, but it was probably TikTok.
It was probably
I
TikTok.
just
Most
listened
people
to I just listened to the D23 episode where you discussed towards the end about if Marvel was ruining the art of cinema and how to go look up other works by people in them. I was curious, what are your favourite artier/lesser-known films by now blockbuster directors, i.e. Taika Waititi does Thor's, but I think Jojo Rabbit is a great piece, if not blockbuster cinema." Colin,
you have come to the right place because a few weeks ago, maybe even a few months ago now, we did a 2-part run-through of the directors of the MCU and the work they've done before and the work they've done after. And in so doing, we talked about the many interesting, lesser-known projects that have spun off from those directors. To quickly answer your question now, I probably would have said Taika Waititi and I probably would have said Boy, which I always talk about. I think it's a wonderful film. But
we did that in like 2 parts, like an Avengers film.
Go back to the episode.
The many directors of the MCU.
Yeah, the many directors of the MCU is the name of the episode, and you'll see in it. It's cool. It was in the early 30s of the numbers, I think, of the episode.
Something like that. Yeah.
And we basically answer your question for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Twice.
Yeah. Plenty of content there. But yeah, do listen to that and let us know. Let us know what you think. Well, there you go. That was the emails for this week. Thank you so much for people that wrote in. We do have more, but we're going to save them for the weeks ahead. Please do keep sending them in.
Yes,
and people have started to send in their opinions of House of the Dragon and Rings of Power. As I've said for a few weeks now, we're going to be doing a wrap up of those at the end of the series. So keep sending those in and we can have your opinions read out for that. But brilliant. There you go. All right, so George, we like to end Pulp Kitchen with a game.
Okay.
We are playing one of our fan favourites, which is movie opposites. The quick fire. I throw them at you. It is the opposite version of the film title. You have to tell me what it is.
I'm nervous.
Right, I know. I get sweaty just like I have such a power dynamic of being able to do it to someone. But please playing along at home. I like to think that people sometimes are like on the bus just shouting like, it's like the thing.
Lion King.
Unforgiven. So yeah, okay. Are you ready?
Okay.
George, you have to guess the movie based on its opposite film title. Ready?
Yep.
Quick fire. 3, 2, 1. Lady of Peace.
Man of War? Lord of War?
Yes. Melted.
Frozen.
Outside Woman.
Inside Man.
Soft Vegetables.
Hard rice.
Sweet
Meat. Sweet. Sour. What's the sweet candy?
Hard Candy.
Hard candy. Ah, yeah.
Run the Circle.
Run the circle. Walk the line.
Yes. Noise.
Sound. Sound. Vision. Sight. Sound. Help me.
Opposite of noise. Silence. The Pavement.
The sidewalk. The road.
Yes.
The road.
The Small Long.
The small long. The Big Short.
Silver Ear.
Golden Eye.
The Lady from Aunt.
The Man from Uncle.
Liverpool by the Lake.
Manchester by the Sea.
Queen Kang.
King Kong. So stupid.
They're so dumb. They're so dumb. But I write them and I'm like, oh.
Very good,
My
James.
favourite
Well
is
done.
Liverpool by the Lake.
Yeah, Liverpool by the Lake.
Oh, Liverpool Liverpool's not the opposite of Manchester. They're not opposites. Suck a dick.
You know what? I'm gonna tell this one to you now that I was going to do, but it's so obscure.
Yeah.
I was gonna give you one that's Scouse.
Mank.
Yeah. Right? Like, you don't remember Mank? That film on Netflix?
Yeah.
Oh,
well, there you go. That was just a little dumb game for you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Pulp Kitchen. Don't forget, we post new episodes of the show every single Wednesday. And we've got loads of other stuff coming out.
Yeah, we have reviews as well coming out on the channel. Please check those out.
Got Andor review.
Yes.
We've got Ticket to Paradise, which I saw, so you can hear what I think of that. What else have we got?
That's it.
That's it.
Because I couldn't see the film I wanted to see.
Ticket to Paradise.
Yeah.
Which I thought, when was the last time you saw a rom-com in cinema?
Whoa.
Ages ago. Anyway, you can go hear my thoughts on that. But there you go.
Yeah, and you know what I'm going to say, guys? The usual. Get us on TikTok, get us on Instagram and YouTube. We're on YouTube. You can watch, subscribe, like, engage, comment. But subscriptions are great. And if you're listening on Spotify, of course, give us that little 5-star.
Follow us on Instagram. We posted some content about how we went to the Amsterdam premiere, which you can check out. You can do a whole thing on that.
And we'll be talking about that next week. So stay tuned for our review of the new David O. Russell film.
Yeah. Exciting times.
Yeah. See you next week, guys. Thanks so much.